Hi traders and welcome to the Markets in 3 with me, John, Senior Market Analyst here at Anzo Capital. Today we're going to talk about the top Forex trades of the week and what has been going on in currency markets. So it's been a really decent week for trend traders. We've been looking at a lot of different markets, and in particular, one of those markets was the Australian dollar versus the US dollar, and that market has continued to rise despite a little bit of a pullback in the US dollar in general. So let's have a little bit of a look at what's been going on. So we started the week looking at potentially Aussie US dollar long. The reason was we looked at the currency strength meter and we were trying to identify what were going to be the potential trend trading markets going into this trading week. And this is why I love using currency strength and weakness, because it gives us an opportunity to be able to identify some key opportunities. So first of all, the New Zealand dollar was the strongest currency that we were looking to buy. Below that, we had the euro and the Australian dollar, as well as the Canadian dollar. Now, as obviously last week progressed, the Canadian dollar weakness started to come in because of the situation between the tariffs of the US and Canada. So I wasn't necessarily too fussed about that one. But still like the idea of selling US dollars, selling Japanese yen, selling Swiss franc. So looking at the markets, one of my top ideas was looking at Aussie yen, Aussie Swiss, Aussie US dollar. And I'm actually in an Aussie US dollar trade right now. I actually tried to buy it twice. I got stopped out the first time because I wasn't following my rules. And then the second one is currently in profit at the moment. So let's break this down. Let's have a look at what we could, why we were looking for the long here. Essentially, it's because we are, looking at Australian dollar strength. And earlier this week, we had some Australian CPI data, which came in a little bit more positive. And the market reacted well to that. Now, because of that, the RBA is expected to hike interest rates a lot quicker than expected. So the market is trying to price that move in by buying Australian dollars. Now, if we think about the flip side, the US dollar is weak because there's potential for inflation that is falling. We have growth falling. So it's basically suggesting that there could be a little bit more downside to the US dollar from a macro perspective. So Aussie US dollar heading higher looks pretty good. So I was trying to buy it this week. Looking at the 4-hour chart, I could have done a little bit better on my entries. So the market pulled back earlier in the week. We were finding support down towards this area at 0 spot 71.45. Really speaking, that should have been my area of interest. Looking back, the market then broke higher. I attempted to buy a breakout move here with my stop losses just below the candle low. Didn't work out for me, and price pulled back into, again, an area of support. And then finally we broke out, retested, so I went long. Now we're currently kind of hovering at the 0 spot 72 handle. Market is currently sort of rejecting that whole number, that psychological number. So I'll need price to kind of break through that for this trade to continue to the upside. But if I go to the hourly chart, there were a couple of moves that I could have took this week which were a bit more beneficial. First one was obviously down towards this area here, right? So one thing I like to look at is when the phase 2 turns back into the phase 1, right? And I'm always trying to buy when I think that that is about to happen. So on the initial pullback here, we can see that on this hourly chart, the market is making lower lows and lower highs, and we actually form a really nice double bottom pattern there. That really should have been my first entry of the week for Aussie US dollar. I should have been buying, even if it was the break above the 50 moving average. I should have been in and around this area here with my stop loss tucked in below the low. That would have been a very much a better reward to a risk trade at that point. I would have at least had a 3-to-1 reward to risk up into this 0 spot 72 handle. I missed this trade though, so unfortunately I couldn't get on the back of this one. The market then continued to push higher. We came back again. We started making those low highs. Now, this was the core PCE print from the US. I tried to get in on that move there, on this breakout move with my stop loss below the low, trying to target up at this area. And the market reversed on me, took me out, stopped me out of my trade. And then, fortunately, managed to get onto a different one where price actually did kind of break through, find support, managed to buy in and around this area here. Price has moved back up to the upside. But I can actually manage this a little bit now because price has broken through these highs. My stop loss doesn't necessarily need to be here. So I can bring my stop well in below this swing low now because the market formed a low here. It made a higher high and has since made a higher high to that. So I could really, in theory, bring my stop loss into profit. I'm going to leave it where it is because I do feel like we might get a pullback before a potential continuation. So I am going to leave it where it's at just to see if we can get that continuation to the upside. Also, some big movers this week. Cable. I've tried to trade cable a few times. It's not been a great trading week for me, to be honest. It's been very up and down. If I go to the day trading area for pounds, I actually sold pound a couple of times yesterday. Managed to get a couple of small winners out of it before price shot back up to the upside. Could have gone short here, but I didn't. The market's kind of finding a bit of a base at this area right now. But if we take a look at the 4-hour chart, just looking at the overall week that we've had in the market, we can see that the price has consolidated. Let me just put this market profile over last week's price action. But we can see that we consolidated in that first part of the week, really above the prior week's value area. We broke back into value. So typically when this happens, the market can kind of continue to find value elsewhere. So I've been looking to see if basically if cable would come back into the 1 spot 35.64 or perhaps into this value area here. And that's been primarily one of my targets going into this trading week. Now I ended up getting stopped because spreads widened on the close, which was unfortunate. I would have still been in this trade and I would have had my original 2-to-1 target before price reversed. So that's a little bit unfortunate there. And if I kind of look a little bit closely, price came up into that kind of wick high that formed last week and retested that, where we've seen that bullish continuation. But if we look, price has kind of failed to make new highs here. The market is really struggling at that point. So, I've been looking to continue to try and short cable down towards that key area, back towards that 135.70. Initial balance is quite normal, which can lead to a nice breakout move. So I'll be looking for a break of the initial balance area before looking for any kind of continuations there, or a pullback into some highs before looking for some opportunities. But cable really wasn't necessarily too much on the list this week. Obviously, pound being one of those sort of in-between currencies, but the dollar being a little bit weaker, but pulling back gave me the opportunity to maybe kind of short that move. If we take a look at some other ones then from the week, Aussie yen has been a market to watch going forward. We go take a look at Aussie yen. We can see that the price of Aussie yen has been bullish throughout this trading week. If I just put a marker on the start of the week, let's go back here, Wednesday. Where's the Sunday? There we go. Aussie yen has been on our marker to be a buyer this week. And look at this 15-minute trend that developed out the market. If we go down even to a 30-minute time frame, we've had a really nice, strong trend out of this market. I mean, in fact, the market opened, gapped lower, and since then has climbed 90 pips to the upside. So even if we adopted a strategy of just buying on the open and selling on the close, 90 pips is nothing to be sniffed at, and there's been plenty of chances to try and buy this move, to be honest. One being, this sorry, one being this pullback into the averages and a break back above. So a nice little, again, lower lows, lower highs, breaking the making high highs, high lows, and the market continued to push higher. If I just bring on the stochastic oscillator here, so we can have a look at that too. It went into that oversold condition and then broke higher, and prices since have kind of held above that sort of 50 level. Every time we kind of came back into the 50 level, we bounced off it and bounced off that 50 moving average pretty strongly as well. So Aussie yen, one of the best performing markets this week, as well as Kiwi yen. Kiwi yen started off the week pretty good. Ended up dropping considerably to the downside, but since then has recovered and is starting to push back to the upside there. So if you tried to buy it towards the start of the week, again, it still would have been pretty good. But as soon as we hit this high here, the market decided to sort of turn around at that point. And then we dropped back down into a level of support. The market found a bit of a base towards these levels here before seeing a continuation higher. And remember, we did a video yesterday talking about trading from highs and lows. And, if you were looking at Monday and watching these lows in here, you would have seen that the market failed to make new swing lows, which was driven from these areas in here. And then, continued to push higher. So as soon as you see a fail of a low, that could be a good opportunity to be a buyer. So that trade would have worked out really nicely. We came into resistance. We don't want to buy anymore. We want to wait for price to come back into support. It broke support, but then found another base at that 94.58 handle. So again, look for the failed lows to be formed, buy on that and see if the market can trade higher. And that would have been, again, very, very nice trading week. Not as much as obviously Aussie yen. If we look at where we opened in terms of if we were to buy on the open, sell on the close, it's only up 6 pips. So you still have to add a little bit of an element of a decent sort of setup in there and look for those trading strategies, even when you're using the currency strength meter. So out of those, really, if we take a look at Kiwi dollar as well, that was one of the top performing markets to have a little look at. Again, not really doing too much. I did put a bit of a potential long idea in this. All week prices kind of pull back. So it's very different against like the Aussie US dollar, because Aussie's been so strong because it had really strong data. So Aussie's been super strong off the back of that. Kiwi, on the other hand, has been pulling back with the dollar strength, right? If we look at the dollar index, it has been pulling back this week, heading into Jackson Hole Symposium. We had the core PCE come out this week as well, which came in and showed that the inflation was a little bit sticky. And that was on Wednesday. That's this bullish day here for the US dollar index. But if we look at the whole context of that, that doesn't look bullish to me, right? We had a big drop because of Scott Bessent getting involved and doing the bond buybacks. Dollar reacted negatively to that. And then since then, we've just had very, very slow climbing days. So I do feel like the dollar weakness could potentially come through. At the moment, it's still struggling a little bit. Position myself on Aussie US dollar as the potential best place for that to happen. Let's go down and see how gold has performed this week. Again, very bearish in terms of the open on Sunday was here. Okay, and we've been pretty flat all week. We've been grinding lower, very much in line with that US dollar index. We have formed a bit of a base around about that 45.75 handle. Market seems to be finding a low here. We've just broken back above the 50 moving average on an hourly chart as well, but it needs to make new highs. It needs to break through in order to look for a bit of a continuation move there. One market that I do like is silver. Silver has come up into $71, $71.50. I've been buying silver down towards these lows. Bought silver around about $67.90, I believe. Let's have a quick flick over to that. We go to majors and let's have a look at silver. So currently long silver at the moment. We are, like I said, we are coming towards that $71 area. So looking for a continuation here. Again, I could probably manage this trade a little bit and probably bring my stop loss below the current swing lows. But I think I'm just going to leave it where it is. Price at the moment, if we have a look at the risk reward tool, target is around about that 2-to-1 area that I'm looking for on the trade. So looking for just a little bit more for for silver to keep popping. I think like the macro environment is very bullish metals at the minute, so I'm happy to kind of continue to look for that. We do have obviously support back down towards these breakout highs, and we've broken those highs now. So I am more on the bullish side of metals at the minute, and so that's why I was looking to sort of buy towards these swing lows here as well, because it was a nice sort of range that the market was in. So waited for price to come back in, waited for a strong bullish close. We closed above the 50 moving average on the hourly chart, but really speaking, I bought because price broke trend on the 15-minute and basically looked to see if price could continue to drive higher. So that market is doing okay at the moment. We'll see if it can continue up, and if it does, fantastic. If it doesn't, we'll have to wait and see. But I might manage this trade. I might bring my stop loss now. It's an hourly chart, so I might just bring my stop in line with underneath these kind of swing lows here, just to reduce risk essentially. If we go take a look at gold, I'm in gold twice. I bought down towards these lows here, and I'm also in at current levels, close above the 50 moving average. So looking to be a buyer on the potential breakout here. Obviously need a lot of progression at this point, but yeah, in a couple of moves here. Dollar Swiss, I tried to get short dollar Swiss. That didn't work out. I like the idea of selling dollars. Probably shouldn't have chose Swiss a weak currency too. Should have just stuck to Aussie US dollar really, which was the market move. Euro as well. If we go take a look at the 4-hour chart, has been pulling back this week. We got long down here a couple of weeks ago. Market has just been pulling back since, and not really interested in this one until the dollar weakens again. So we'll keep an eye on that one too. But the best performing currency this week has been the Australian dollar. That market has been very bullish, even if we go across to most markets. So if you ignored everything and just went and bought sort of Aussie Swiss this week, we had a nice breakout move in here, which would have been one of the trades, Aussie US dollar and Aussie yen, you would have done super well. So sometimes it's best to just stick to the currency strength meter than trying to guess too many moves. But thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this trading week. I hope you enjoyed all the content this week. If you did, leave this live stream a thumbs up. Live streams next week are going to be changing a little bit. They won't necessarily be daily. They might be more event driven. And next week we have a couple of events lined up. So we have average hourly earnings. So we have the NFP coming up next week. We also have other events across global markets to keep our eyes on, which includes an RBNZ interest rate decision. Probably won't be trading that one because that's well in sort of 3 a.m. my time. But we have the Bank of Canada interest rate decision, and we have the employment change on the Friday. So, guys, I will potentially catch you then. Thank you so much for watching the stream this week. Really appreciate it. If you have any comments, questions, anything like that, please let me know. I'll speak to you soon.